morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fargo Parking Commission meeting. We'll start out with introductions. Barrett, you want to start?
Barrett Voigt with the Planning Department.
Mark Williams with the Planning Department.
Jim Gilmore, City Fargo.
Ryan Hare, Downtown Business Owner.
Margie Bailey, Executive Director, Fargo Theater, retired. I'm working on a culinary project, and God only knows what else.
And I'm Mike Williams, Risk Manager.
I don't have that much going on. I'm Randy Thorson, Downtown Business Owner.
Dave Pepcorn, Fargo City Commission.
Andy Renfrew, Interstate Parking.
Miranda Wolf, City of Fargo Planning.
Hi, thanks, everybody. First item is to approve the order of agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next is the meetings from August 30th. Anybody want to make a motion to approve?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we're going to go with Andy in the financial report.
Thank you, Chairman. We kind of split, since we didn't meet last month, we split August and September into separate agenda items here. I didn't prepare a full memo for August. I have a hard enough time remembering what happened in September, but August is typically a time where we start ramping back up from the summer, the school back in session. The financial statements that are in the packet show that the monthly revenue was pretty steady from July to August, but the daily revenue, the transient revenue, the validation revenue were both down from July. Obviously because of Street Fair, TEDx, those are big events that take place in the month of July that really spike our revenue in the middle of the summer. So revenue was down about $4,000 total, so about 1% or so, a little more than 1%. And then expenses were down as well. We did have some turnover in our patrol staff, so the patrol payroll was down a little bit, and net income to the city was down just slightly, about $500 total from July. So,
Okay.
very brief, but if you have any questions on August, I'll try to answer those.
Anybody have any questions for Andy? Otherwise, we'll go on to the financial and operations report.
Sure. September was a little more exciting for us. We had a number of repairs going on at our garages. September 10th, the Robert Street construction shifted, so they kind of split that section between 2nd Avenue and 4th Avenue into two phases. The first phase was the southern portion where they closed Robert Street from 2nd Avenue up to the garage entrance. Didn't impact our operations at the garage, except for parkers who had to come in from the north. On the 10th, they shifted to the north phase, closing it from the 4th Avenue side, so cars have to come in from the south. When they did that, they also had to redo the approach, the driveway to the garage. And in order to do that and to do it quickly, we had to close two of our driving lanes. So we were down to one lane in and out of the garage for about 3 weeks. Actually went surprisingly smoothly. The contractor doing the road construction hired flaggers to direct traffic in and out. Worked really well. I didn't get a single complaint from folks being held up or any issues like that. So it did mean we couldn't use our parking equipment, and it kind of coincided with some of the repairs at the Civic ramp. So we had a very full garage, and we did come full on a number of those days over those few weeks. But it was unfortunate timing, but fortunately things did work out, and we are back to normal now, and our garages are looking good. On September 17th, that's when repairs began at the Civic Center ramp, the GTC garage, and the Island Park ramp. Included in those repairs is a deck coating that's being applied to, in some cases, like the Civic ramp, there's a deck coating that is being applied to the entire surface. So that required us to provide large sections of the parking garage at a time to the contractor to be efficient and to apply that coating. For a couple weeks there, we had 200 of our, or 180 at one point of our contract parkers from the Civic ramp relocated to the Roberts Commons garage. So an extra 180 parkers, you can see how we could have some capacity issues at ROCO. But again, short-term pain. We were able to relocate those folks. The garage is back open. It opened a few weeks ago. Things are going good there. And then a couple weeks ago, October 8th, GTC garage, we closed that for, ended up being just over 2 weeks. At the bottom of the garage, there was a slab on grade replacement that had to be made. They had to dig out the old concrete, re-pour it. Unfortunately, when the first week that they were there, that's the week we got rain and snow every day. So they had to pump that out, and they were delayed for that. But Opened back up on Tuesday this week, so it's looking good. And made the strength test, and things are going good again. Kind of touching on that, today and tomorrow, the Island Park ramp is closed for the final deck coating going on there. We did have to close the entire garage as they recoat the drive lanes in there, and the turns wouldn't be able to be made just using the typical parking areas. It's too sharp. So today and tomorrow, Island Park ramp is closed.
So on that note, we've been notifying the tenants ahead of time that the relocations are going to be happening.
Yeah.
I've got a few calls about, not everybody got the message, and that's fairly typical. But one of the things is with Island Park being completely closed, can we maybe be more lenient on the enforcement on the area parking?
Yeah, and we've worked with staff on kind of that decision not to enforce the time zones for these 2 days while this is going on.
Okay, and then was that in your notification?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
And-
they're aware?
Yep, and we do our best to notify folks. Email is the easiest way for us. We don't have everyone's email, so, but we are able to identify those that don't, and we can make phone calls. The folks that we weren't able to reach by phone, we did send letters to their mailing address. One of the challenges we run into is we have a lot of corporate accounts, so there might be one individual for representing 100 parkers, and we might give them that notice, and then we have to rely on them to cascade that down to their parkers and so on, so.
Right, so it's really about communication, and we've got the DCP here today, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I just think we can't over-communicate and stuff as all this construction's going on, and it needs to be all hands on deck. So like you said, once it gets into a business, a corporate account, it's really up to that corporation to let their people know.
Yeah.
But
And-
we need to help encourage that.
Yeah, in some cases where we have recurring things, like each last few years, we've had the skating rink in the main avenue lot. We've actually gone out and actually gotten contact information for each parker, even those that are under a corporate account, just because those are recurring things. When we put the rink in and we take the rink out, it's usually a couple of events, one for the warming house, one for the rink. So it's about at least four communications a year just for that one lot. So we did go out and get contact information for each parker.
Thanks, Andy. Anything else
How
on
about
this
for
one?
general
Yeah.
public? How do you notify, what kind of signage do you have there? If somebody turns in and is intending to park there and has planned to do that, and then they realize that it's closed, what's the notification?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different depending on the garage. So the Island Park ramp, like today and tomorrow, is not a public parking. It's not a daily parking location. So the garage is completely closed. With the repairs that we made at the Civic Center ramp, we relocated enough contract parkers to allow our typical volume of daily parkers in. So if it's 50 parkers a day that we expect at the Civic Center ramp, we moved enough contract parkers to allow that, so hopefully not to impact that. Roberts Commons, we have full signage when the garage does come full that we rely on. So, and with the construction that was going on there, a few occasions we did move a full sign out to the intersection of 2nd Avenue and Roberts. So hopefully get them before they turn down that dead end.
Any other questions for Andy or comments? Anything else on this report?
Just a couple things. The contracts that we have rented MP Avenue, we had a few contracts leave, so we are down below our target. We have gone through our wait list, so for folks that are listening, we do have space available at the MP Avenue lot for rent. Island Park ramp is one that here in a couple weeks, the Bank of the West ramp next door to us, they're going to be changing from a reserve stall parking system to kind of a first come first served basis, which is good parking management on their part, but it will take some of their parkers out of our ramp as theirs becomes more utilized. So just kind of so you guys are aware, we will probably see fewer contracts from folks that work in the Bank of the West building going forward.
So were you notified about Sanford?
Not directly.
Okay, so they're going to be moving quite a few spots out of there, so there'll be some openings at Island Park.
Yep.
Mike, I have a meeting with the Sanford people 2 weeks from now, and so I'll have a better idea of what their plans are for downtown. They rent spaces in, I guess, these 3 or 4 of our facilities. They have offices in both the Radisson Tower, Wells Fargo building, as well as that annex building north of American Federal. So we'll have a better idea later this month on what their long-term plans are. I think they are moving some people out of the downtown. They're also shifting some people around within the downtown.
Great.
Just a few more things from September. In that little table I have there, tried to include the number of tickets that we're issuing per day at each of our transient facilities, as well as how that's changed from previous months, as well as the average ticket value. At the Civic ramp, pretty steady. We were up 3 tickets in August, down 3 tickets in September, so it's pretty steady, about 33, 36 transient parkers a day there. Average ticket value has been climbing in the month of September. Average ticket value was $7.20. The full day rate there is $7.50. So, and I've got a lot more information in the packet, our parking mix and all of that. The MP Avenue lot, our average ticket is increasing the last 3 months, as well as the number of tickets per day. We're up 14 tickets a day over the last 2 months. Roberts Commons, similar story in that the average ticket value is increasing each of the last 3 months, but also last 3 months, the number of tickets that we cashier each day is going down, which some of that's to be expected with some of the construction activity that's wrapping up there, but fewer tickets, but higher revenue per ticket.
So your report says during those days that we had the flaggers, it was down, of course, because we couldn't run the gear, so
Right.
it was down a lot. Does that have a big bearing on the number of tickets on average?
Well, so on those days, we didn't issue tickets.
Right.
So,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Didn't it drag everything down?
right,
Right.
right. Yeah, that'd be correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and it's tickets per day, so it's not, so for the,
It's- oh, I-
the 13
isn't there an
days-
average?
Yeah, yeah, so it's the 13 days or so that we were issuing tickets, this is the average over those days.
Okay.
And to that point, Roberts Commons not being able to use the equipment, not charging for parking, which again was a decision we made to really just make it more convenient for folks rather than slowing them down, taking a ticket and cashiering them by hand as they're leaving, 400 and some parkers a day. We made the decision not to charge for parking during that time. Did have a significant impact. Revenue, daily revenue at Roberts Commons was down 75% in September. Net income for the month was down 11%.
Yeah, I used it during that time, and it really did work smooth. So it's pretty amazing. We knew this was coming a long time ago, and I think you guys handled it well.
I think once Roberts gets open, the streets open all the way through, we'll have better utilization too, because right now you can only get from it or to it from one direction, and that direction has changed, so.
Yep. Absolutely. Time zone violations in the month of September, kind of a unique shift. The pattern still remains the same, where we have typically a lot of welcomes and a lot of $20 level citations, but our welcomes were down significantly in September, just 79, and then our $20 level ticket spiked to just under 500 there. So $25 level, $30 level, pretty consistent month to month, but just kind of interesting kind of a shift there.
So is there any kind of metrics we can learn from that, as far as, because really you're wondering how many new people are coming to downtown, and maybe the welcoming ticket's kind of a little bit of a measure for that, I don't know.
Yeah. I was presenting it for about a year or so each month, the number of new plates that were being added that I don't have in here, but I could start bringing that back. Yeah, what this would tell you is that there's fewer new plates in the month of September, and 500 of those folks that got a ticket previously got another one. So.
Anything else, Andy?
Don't need to touch on it too much, it's kind of self-explanatory, but there are some other reports that we can run with our parking software behind these statements. You can see that our parking mix, so for example, the first one, the Civic Center ramp, you can see that in the month of September, at the Civic Center ramp, 18.8, almost 19% of all tickets cashiered were at the 5-hour level. One thing that makes the Civic ramp a little more challenging to present this is they have a lot of validations. About 2/3 of our total daily parking revenue is going to fall under validations, and those are not as easily tracked to see which level they fall under. The average ticket value of validations was, I have it in here somewhere, $5.48, I believe. So it would fall in that 3 to 4 hour level. But we can't break it down as nicely as this report shows for validations. So that information is in there for each of our transient lots. The NP lot, 55% of tickets at the NP lot are all day, the $5 level. Roberts Commons, 68% of tickets are under that 2 hours. Again, we can't break it down to see who's, under 1 hour, to see what that is, but, and then finally, the last couple pages, you'll have tables that are kind of hard to read here, but this is just showing, it's broken down by location, Civic Ramp and Roberts Commons, monthly parkers, transient parkers, and what you're kind of looking for here is to see, in September, our peak monthly occupancy was 147. That happened on September 14th, or excuse me, September 11th, Tuesday, September 11th at 2 p.m. But really that, if you look at that 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. range is where our peak occupancy is. And then also showing the same thing for the transients, parkers. Saturdays we peaked in September, we peaked at 135 parkers on a weekend. Weekday we peaked at 116, that was Wednesday, September 5th. That coincided with the Recovery Reinvented event at the Civic Center. So on the 5th you'll see a big spike at both Roco and the Civic Center garage.
Anything else for Andy? Any other questions for him? Otherwise, we'll go on to the, thanks, Andy. We'll go on to the parking rates.
Thank you. Yes, so it's that time of year again. I made some recommendations for where I think our monthly contract parking rates should go, and also kind of new this year, made some recommendations to changes to our hourly rates. In the monthly rate recommendations, I've continued to try to put a wider spread between the higher demanded locations and the less demanded. For example, right now our rate at Island Park is $59. My recommendation is to keep it at $59. We're oversold 20% or so there, but our usage, our utilization is much lower. So we have capacity there. We continue to have capacity there to add more parkers. It'd be my goal to balance the system, I guess. So in that location, my recommendation is to keep it the same, but the Civic Ramp and Roberts Commons, where we have high demand and wait list, and they're nice facilities, to push those a little higher. So I included in the table below the actual nominal valuations, the percent change. So you can see Roberts Commons, Civic Center, under my recommendations would go up 7.1%, and then the rest of them would be pretty reasonable, 3-4%. As recommended, total percent change can be expected to be about 4.8% as a system. And I did want to kind of mention that we have gotten feedback that rates are maybe getting a little prohibitive for folks that are looking at downtown. We have had folks move out of downtown. One of the complaints has been parking rates. We have gotten feedback that folks have not moved downtown for parking. So certainly if there was, how do I say this, a desire to maybe hold some of the lots, maybe push Roco and the Civic Ramp, but hold the other ones. I think that's a decision that this group can make. But for example, if we took Roberts Commons, Civic Ramp, GTC, one more. If we raised those, kept the other ones the same, that would be a net increase to the system of 3.6%. So it's kind of how this group wants to proceed.
Commissioner Thorson.
You're saying it's 3.6% increase overall, or just those?
If we went with what I have recommended here for the Civic Ramp, Roberts Commons, GTC, and Island Park, and left all the other rates the same, that would be a 3.6 increase system-wide revenue for next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CPI is at 2.2 for the year. So I think that's always one of my concerns, is that we continue to raise even these surface lots, And, how many people take a look at that, or the businesses that want to come downtown and don't because of that? It's a very simple thing, even with restaurants downtown, that if you're trying to get more restaurants in the downtown area, you still got to pay for parking for their employees, or the employees have to pay it. So it's, even though we have the 4-hour parking zones that we've created on the outside of Broadway, it's still a concern of mine. The one thing I do want you to explain to me, though, is, again, the Island Park, $59. When I look at it, you have 412 spots available. How does it run at 116%? And we're not full. I mean, you must be daily renting that, or?
No, so the big factor there is Bank of the West has a call center that operates 24/7, so they have a
I see.
contract for each parker, even though they're working multiple shifts.
So it's not based on day parts, it's the whole day?
Right.
I see.
One of the other large users of the Island Park ramp is Hawaii, and they, of course, have a large staff, but again, they're not all there at the same time because of the, different shifts and different hours. So I think they probably, and, even though we got 355 spots, rarely do we get up to 250 cars in there with 400 rentals.
Yeah, and again, my concern, Andy, is that the difference between, say, an NP lot or a lot that we're charging $81 for, and you can go to GTC a block away, park underground, especially in the wintertime, and you're spending $9 more a month. So I think the logic that you have behind the idea of raising the garages, except for perhaps Island, and still getting an overall increase is a good idea.
And those are the highest cost to maintain,
Right.
and we have debt service on some of them, so I think that makes, and again, one of the things is we've always tried to do a graduated rate that's reasonable, so it doesn't blow anybody's budget. So I think that this recognizes that we're being sensitive to that, those comments, and still providing, Island Park at that rate is a deal, so if you can walk a few blocks, so we really have options for people that
Right.
are shopping.
And we've been very aggressive the last, especially 2 years ago, the first time we came in, made recommendations. We looked at other markets. We looked at what the private market in Fargo was charging for parking. So last year, or 2 years ago, was very aggressive, getting us closer to what that private market charge would be. And then last year, again, pretty aggressive again in a lot of locations to, again, be fair to, the citizens, the taxpayers for our assets. So, but then we balance that against, we are offering a public good and that too. So.
So, do we have any further discussion? Do we have a recommendation, anything? Anybody want to make a motion? Or Andy, go ahead.
And I didn't split the recommendations for monthly and hourly. Just real quick on the hourly rates. I wasn't able to find the last time we looked at rates in the hourly rates in the locations. For at least the past 4 years, it's been $1.75 or $1.50 an hour at the Civic Center ramp, $1 an hour at the MP Avenue lot, and then we cap that at equal to 5 hours at each location. So my recommendation for hourly rates for next year, Civic ramp, bumping that a quarter an hour. So the all-day rate would go to $8.75. At the MP lot, we leave it at $1 an hour, but we lift that cap from equal to 5 hours or $5 to 7 hours. So if somebody was spending 7 hours or all day there, they would pay 7 instead of 5 today. But if they're still staying that 1 through 5 hours, they would pay the same rate.
So, the way you'd break it down to get to the 3.6 would be to apply the recommended monthly rates to the structure parking, the Civic ramp, the Roberts Commons,
Yep.
and which other one, GTC was it?
GTC, yep, and Island Park, which was no change. So those 4.
Those would go at the recommended rate,
Yep,
and then all the rest would go at the recommended minimum.
correct. That would meet the 3.6 increase
Yep.
system-wide.
So, what do we think about that? Anybody have any discussion or want to make a motion?
I'd make a motion, or at least try.
And the hourly rates, right?
Right.
Yep.
Do you want those as separate motions, or how do you, I'll put them all in one. I'll try, Andy.
Okay.
So, I I would make a motion to approve the recommended monthly rates for the structured parking, as Andy has set out here, and to, as well as the recommended hourly rates for all day and hourly, as Andy has indicated here, to approve that. And then we would just,
Keep it at the recommended minimum for the rest.
Recommended minimum.
we would leave the recommended minimum rates as they are, correct? Is
For
that
those other
okay.
lots. Yep.
Second.
Just to clarify, the recommended minimums do include some small rate increases on a few of the surface lots, just so you see that.
Right, a couple bucks. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All against, no. Thanks, Andy, that's a good work again. I think, and it shows that we're doing maintenance on them because of the inconvenience right now, so it really is part of that fee that we charge. Thanks. So the citation fines report, Andy. You're a busy guy today.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I brought this topic last month. As I mentioned, we are working with Passport to be our sole provider of citation issuance and back office functions. Currently, we have Passport for off-street, Duncan Solutions for on-street. We did an RFP process, selected Passport as the vendor, and we're working with them. We've been having weekly meetings to set that system up, and we're nearly ready for testing already. And we've got 2 months before we go live, January 1st. So things are moving well on that front. But as we got into that process, we thought it might be a good time to look at the fines that we charge for on-street citations. We updated this 2 years ago when interstate parking started doing the on-street enforcement downtown. So again, trying to stick with a more gradual increase. At the time, it was we went from $15 citations to $20 citations. So 33% increase. So trying to be a little more modest going forward, but doing it more regularly. Our recommendations for the time zone violations, first time would continue to be that welcome ticket. Second would go from $20 to $23. So they're jumping $3 a ticket. So second time zone would be 23, third would be 28, and the third would be 31. Mobility impaired would stay the same. No parking zone violation would move from $20 to 23. This is one that we might be able to discuss a little more. Time zone violations, if somebody parks in a 90-minute zone, they can get a citation every 90 minutes. If you park in a no parking zone, you get 1 ticket each day. Something to consider that somebody might be able to park in a no parking zone all day and only receive 1 citation, where somebody next to them parked exceeding the time zone would get multiple tickets. We also have a late fee at 15 days of $5. We're recommending an additional late fee at 21 days of an additional $5 for that. So those are our recommendations. Those are the same as was presented last month, but there was some discussion about what our surrounding communities and what our maybe peer communities charging for parking citations. Start at the top. Bismarck contacted them. They have a fairly aggressive parking citations and process. So first time offense is 15, second is 25, and so on all the way up. Fifth or more are $55. They have 30 days to pay those citations. After 30 days, a $40 late fee is applied, and they are a summons to appear in the municipal court is issued. If the violator does not appear in the municipal court, an additional $40 fee is applied and a warrant is issued. So quite a bit more aggressive than what we do here. So,
Watch myself.
so their time zone violations start off a little lower, but certainly go much higher than ours, as well as their incentive to resolve those citations is much higher than ours is today as well. In Moorhead, parking citations, they do have a few time zones. Parking citations are $25, and then they have a $10 late fee at 7 days, 14 days, and 21 days. West Fargo, citations are $8 and a $2 late fee at 10 days. And I threw in Sioux Falls as well. They're a little bit different because they do have metered on-street parking. You can see if a vehicle is in violation, if they're overtime on their meter, it's a $10 citation, essentially a $5 late fee, and then another $15 late fee after 30 days. So, and then they also have the welcome ticket or the courtesy ticket to folks that have license plates licensed outside of the 4-county area.
Andy, I've got a question on the first page.
Sure.
The 23 was a $3 increase. What were the increases on the third time violation and the fourth?
$1.
time? What were they?
They were, that would be a mistake on my part. The fourth or more violation, so they should have each gone up by $3.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that, yes. So that would go up to 33.
So which, do we by far, you know, in that 6 months period, is it, I mean, a huge percentage of those are first time, or the 23 or $20 tickets right now? Would that be the vast majority of the tickets? Is
Yeah,
$20?
it's about half of the tickets are going to be at
Okay.
that $20 level.
Yeah, that was my question too, Brian. It looked like we were not, you know, part of the reason for this graduated rate are the people that just are gaming the system that don't mind paying that highest rate, and they should be dinged as much or more than the rest, I would think. But it doesn't seem to be working to you, Andy. Are we getting the turnover we want on those 90-minute spots? On the 4-hour spots, I don't know that we are.
Yeah, that's the 4-hour zones, you know, that when we made those changes a few years ago.
Right.
That was partly the intention, was to get more utilization outside of the core. We weren't necessarily looking for turnover. I think we do a pretty good job, you know, on Broadway, Robert Street, Fifth Street. I think we do get quite a bit of turnover. Still think meters would be the ideal situation. But, yeah.
So, go ahead, Dave.
Can I ask a question? So the whole thing about getting multiple tickets, that some people, is it, maybe you can come back to us with, is there another solution to that other people are using? Because to me, that doesn't seem, there's got to be a better way to do it. If someone can park in a no parking and get one ticket, and that, to me.
So
there's-
like the reparking, things like that? Yep. So, and then, Andy, so when, okay, let's say that you have 3 violations in one day. Does that run you up the scale right away, or are they all considered first-time tickets?
It will run you up the scale right away.
It does, okay. So that third one will be ding you at the highest rate, or if you had a violation before. Okay. Kathy, you got something? Hi.
Well, just with the no parking thing, it's not just downtown. You gotta remember, it's all over the city. You know, so
Yeah.
with, you know, snow season coming, we have, you know, no parking, snow days, things like that, that they park there once, they get one ticket. That's where the one ticket event comes in. They park in front of a fire hydrant, that's one offense. We can't multiply that
Okay.
throughout the day.
So, Mr. Chairman, so this might be an issue that we should look at, but I mean, we might be able to come up with a solution here, and it would impact the whole town. Because I think it's something that we need to look at. And if you have other suggestions, I think we should look at some of those
Yeah.
things, because it
So-
doesn't seem fair.
Right now, but I do think, you think about the, kind of the density and the congestion, so I believe these rates just apply to the downtown area on the graduated rates, or it doesn't apply all over town?
The
So
graduated
again,
is
we've
just
already have
downtown.
that precedent that there's a difference in the rates depending on the location, so we've designated this area.
So can I ask you, what do you think, what do you think would be a good solution? That's open-ended for anybody, I don't, but there's got to be, somebody else has to be doing something that we could copy that's a good idea.
You mean one that applies all over town, no matter where you're at?
Yeah, that's the question. What do you think?
So what's the, I don't quite understand the question.
Well,
Sorry.
first of all, this whole, the parking tickets, to have multiple ones, other towns have to be having the same issue that we do, and what do they do?
Yeah, so our recourse for, you know, if a vehicle has 3 or more citations, 2 weeks past due, they're eligible for impound. That's you know, we typically, you know, wait 3-4 tickets, get them up over $100 before that they owe us before we impound. That's our method right now. Other cities can do booting, and that's something that I'm looking into. There's a couple of vendors that provide really electronic, cloud-based boots that can be, the violator can pay for their citations over the phone, get a code to unlock the boot, return it to us the next day. So that's a solution that we're looking into. Other cities use other methods to get citation payment, DMV holds, tax liens, other things more aggressive to get payment.
So like Bismarck, they have the same system where, their rates are different in their core, in their downtown than there are around town. The street department issues a lot of tickets too, and they just go with that flat rate, I believe. Is that right, Kathy?
Yeah. Outside of town is the flat $20 rate for any violation.
Would these fees impact those? And-
Yes,
and
yes. They would go up to.
We could decide if they want to or not, but basically what the impact this would have then is those $20 flat fees outside of the downtown would go to $23.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the way you understand it?
No, I just think this is a good discussion, because I think it impacts the whole town, and
Sure.
But it goes back to it doesn't seem fair to me. So you could have one person have 3 tickets, like, in a day. That just doesn't seem fair. I don't, does that seem fair to you, or, I don't know.
I think, I don't know, my take on it is the welcome ticket really is the game changer, because then people just don't know. And again, it is more difficult to park downtown because we've got a lot more options that a lot of people just aren't aware of. In the residential areas or other areas, you don't have those, that same issue.
I think the no parking all day long occurs more outside of downtown than it does downtown. Downtown, you might have the person parked in front of a fire hydrant on an outlying area all day long type of a thing more than that. If they're doing the no parking, getting caught there, doing it because it's the only option, they're late for class, they're outside of downtown, you've got the ones that, I'm going to park here all day long, I can do this, because I know I can't park here 8 to 3 and during the day, but I went out last night and I'm not going to move my car.
It's a good discussion. I just think it's an issue that just goes back. I think the whole fairness thing is big. That's what I don't get.
I worked at the Radisson, and I had like $80 in tickets every month for a while, and then I finally asked them for a parking pass. But I mean, sometimes you just got to sting them, or they're not going to learn.
I also think that, we've addressed this, at past meetings, and that's why the welcome tickets, have started. And we're doing welcome tickets with everybody who is downtown, who comes from South or North Fargo or Moorhead, and don't understand the parking rules. And it's just a nice gesture for anybody who comes downtown. Again, Sioux Falls only does it for out-of-state plates, and they welcome them. So, some of those things that we're already doing, to me, take care of understanding. If they had a parking ticket in a hydrant and had been downtown and hadn't had any tickets, would they get a welcome ticket at the hydrant, or would they get a ticket?
No, those violations, they get the
Okay.
immediate ticket,
Right.
because it's an immediate violation.
Can I just, one more thing, and then I'll shut up, because I know I'm just the liaison, but we want people to feel, you don't want to have them have a bad taste in their mouth, especially new visitors. That's critical. But the other thing is, with all the stuff going on, all the construction, we are going to have to be very flexible, I think, in the next couple of years, because it's going to be, there's so many we already get, road closures, sidewalk closures. We have to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit more forgiving than normal because of all the things going on.
Well, and what we talked about today as far as having to close Island Park and just, that's just some common sense to be less, let them park on the avenue longer. So those types of things are, but without meters in particular, when we talk to parking people around the country, they go, you don't have meters and you still get turnover? And how did you do that? And the graduated rate is one of the ways that we've been able to do that with the welcoming ticket.
And just we've already been through this many times, but I do think we need to go back to the legislature, and I do think our downtown, it's a continuous argument, but at a certain point, we're going to have a change, because our downtown is changing all the time, and so and it's a management tool that we need to have. So anyway,
I'm with you. So if you would submit a bill, that'd be great. It's hard to find sponsors anymore, I can tell you, but
We all
we can
agree.
work on it. Randy?
But in addition to the first hour free, during that time, we're all the same commissioners have been on here when we established 4-hour parking zones outside of this 90-minute area that we have. We also have worked really hard to make certain that parking lots are free parking after 5 and weekends. So, there's a lot of good things that we've done, versus looking at a lot of changes. In my opinion, we either raise the rate or we just leave it the way it is because of the difficulty that's, parking is right now with all the construction. Maybe this would be you could set something up for next year to do this, but I know that we've worked very, very hard to provide the parking for those people that work downtown, people that come downtown, make it easy to have options after 5 o'clock to park really anywhere you want. So I think that part of it we've done very, very well. I also think that since the interstate parking has come on, we've gotten actually more aggressive with the parking lots and the fines that we have in those areas as well. So I would believe, Andy, that the revenue that you've generated is in those parking lots is considerable to, before your company came on.
Yeah, I know off the top of my head, the NP Avenue lot doubled in revenue.
Right.
After we installed the pay stations and started enforcing it.
Right. So I think we've done a lot of stuff, but I agree with Commissioner Pepcorn is that maybe the time for right now is not to do this, but the time we could study, how it's going to affect the rest of the city, and do we want to change fines for different zones or for multiple parking violations. So that's how I feel.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Do we like the idea of, with the changes that are going on, it's tough to relay? Do we want to keep them where they're at for now, or are we, again, getting back to the graduated rate increase? That's something that we've tried to do, is not sting them at any one time. So let's say we do it next year. Doesn't mean we necessarily would have to double up to $6
Yeah,
or something.
Mr. Chairman, the only reason I would agree to increase anything on Broadway is if Andy tells us we have so many repeated violations there,
right.
and we're not turning the cars that we need to turn for the businesses that are on that street.
Yeah.
And I would look at that, but otherwise, I think that I would wait a year until we get through.
So
some
Andy,
of
is
the
there
construction.
evidence that you think this would make a difference in the repeat offenders, or is it best just to wait?
I don't think it would make an impact on the serial violators.
So I would, we just hold and not move forward. It's not going to make a difference right now with the people that are really.
I don't have anything to back this up. My feel is that the folks that are really abusing it aren't the ones parking on Broadway. Certainly we issue a lot of citations, and I can bring more details on that next time. But my feel is that the folks that are really abusing the system are parking on 5th Street, 4th Street, 2nd Avenue. The folks that are working downtown every day that want to park in front of their building. That's my sense.
So is there any sense to maybe just increasing that 4th or more time zone? Because those are the people that are just basically saying, okay, I'll pay $90 and hope I don't get caught 3 times. Or, you know what I mean? So maybe, the 1st and 2nd leave alone, and maybe maybe raise up that 4th time zone violation $5 and say it's good. Just, you look at Bismarck, goes up to $55. But I don't know, if you don't think, it's really a management tool, it's not a revenue thing. So if it doesn't have an impact on the management, then.
But you'd have to substantially increase
Yeah.
that 4th one.
Well, I don't know, yeah, $5 probably isn't gonna do
Probably
it.
it's not going to make.
But anyway, do you want to bring this back, or do you need a motion so we can, because we're good on, with the ramp rates. So now this one,
Let me work on it a little more.
Yeah.
I can come back next month with information on where are we issuing citations. I don't know if I'll be able to see, where are the repeat offenders happening. I don't know if I can get to that level. But I think to Brian's point too, I think it'd have to be a substantial amount. $3, $5 probably isn't going to cut it for these folks that are
Right.
racking up $300 worth of citations already, or more. So maybe let me work on it for another month, and I'll come back with some more information.
Well, and Andy, the other thing that I would like to have you look at, I have gotten some input from downtown retailers, that their perception is that construction workers, people who are involved in projects in the downtown area, are abusing the system. And that's their perception, so they don't have hard data on that. So I think it would be important for you to be looking at who those repeat offenders are and why they're downtown, and just to either dispel or either refute that impression or provide some remedy for it.
Randy, do you have something?
Well, just to, what Margie's saying is that, when you think about it, I see these construction people all the time, and they just take, when they were working on one of the buildings across the street from the old Broadway, they took the whole side, and they just cone it off, and it's like, how do you get to do that? And so I think that that's important to take a look at, and who's parking there. Most of these places have set up areas where they have their parking set up, their staging areas, and for some contractors, and I've been dealing with them for 40 years, they just like to be as close to that front door as they can get, and it's not going to be possible. We want to be able to turn the traffic on Broadway during this construction time so that those businesses can remain successful. And I think that's what we look at when you're determining what's going on Broadway. Just take a look at that and then come back and make a recommendation, and we'll look at it.
Well, and I think in addition to that, Randy, I was at a meeting at the Stone Building yesterday afternoon and watched that exact thing happen right outside the building, where they pulled up and were doing some kind of processing, and they simply cordoned it off. So I don't know what the process is on that kind of thing, but that's the kind of thing that retailers are observing happen, and they don't understand what the process is either. So I think it would be important to monitor that and come back with some kind of
I think,
an official observation. And Jim, maybe you could fill us in on what that process is.
I mean, there's a formal process through engineering, so that if you need to block off an area for construction, and, for instance, I've seen, Gate City, some other buildings where you're, dropping debris off the building, and so clearly that needs to be blocked off for a period of time. But we've also seen, where just contractor vehicles have just, pulled up and parked there, and I know Andy's been, some of them have these construction permits, but those aren't valid on Broadway, so we have been putting notices to them that, get your vehicle moved, because next time you come back, we're giving you tickets. And a lot of the businesses too, Gate City Bank and some of the others are good at getting after their contractors, because they're relying on that turnover for their customers. So, but yeah, so I know Andy's been, keeping an eye on that and trying to, but you're right, sometimes they just come in and they don't go to engineering, they don't get permits. So it's a continuing thing we're going to have to work with. Kind of one of the, small negative for some of the construction we've got going on, but certainly trying to work with contractors.
And it's something that we're working with engineering on too, because when they do get that construction permit to close off the right-of-way, we don't know. So, it's, whether somebody has permission or not, we have no way of knowing. So that's something we're working with engineering on is,
Okay.
Mark?
We might be jumping ahead a little bit, but maybe we want to combine
In the,
item 10 with this discussion right now, because item 10 does talk about contractor parking and
Okay.
some current concerns that the DCP has.
okay, I think that's.
Do we want to do that?
But Mr. Chairman, that's why these meetings are awesome, because, engineering should have we should have direct contact, so they know exactly.
And it needs to know.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's why it's a good thing.
Right, I'm gonna
Because-
text Jeremy, see if he can come real quick.
So as far as this, we're just going to drop this now. We don't need a motion, and we can go on to the.
Right, we're gonna just table this, and Andy's gonna do some research, bring back a little more information, and we'll take it up again next time. So the future parking facilities, Jim, thanks, Andy.
The included in your package, just memo, I think we need to start to think about where, our next parking facility should be downtown. And, just for some background information, I included this, this map, and, we certainly are happy when surface parking facilities are filled with development, but that also means it reduces the amount of parking that we have available downtown. So I summarized that in the memo. So if you look at, 2015, we used to have 100 people that rented parking spots in the Civic Center lot. Generally, they walk through the Skyway to the core of the downtown. That ended once we had to move Second Street over, and so we've no longer rented spaces in there since 2015. As you know, in 2016, Roberts Commons garage construction began. We eliminated a 100-spot parking lot that the city had, as well as 70 private lot that Kilborn Group had recently acquired. And when the parking garage was finished, we closed the parking lot behind the Black Building, and that was about 65 spots. And then in September, the Block 9 construction began. We had a lot with about 40 spaces, and I think US Bank had 64. And so as you kind of add all this up, while Roberts Commons added a 454 stall parking garage, we've closed 439 surface parking spots, so we're kind of a net gain of 15. So, at this point, one of the impediments to getting more businesses downtown, Andy mentioned the cost of parking. That's been a concern, but the other is just the availability of parking, not only for today, but for future expansion. If we look at Andy's report, we see that the Civic ramp is full for monthly parkers with a waiting list of 50. NP is full, Roco is full, but waiting list of 5 people, and the GTC has 13 available. Now we get down to Island Park, there's more there, but that ends up being a 4-block walk for a lot of these businesses, and so prospective people are looking at leasing space downtown. They might be able to get 13 today, but what if they add 7 more people in the future? And so I think that's becoming an issue with a variety of the office building owners downtown. So I think it's time to start to explore some options, and I can start to work on that. Certainly some of the options that we have now are things we've looked at in the past. I think the 3 to get into and explore in more detail is one, our Civic ramp. When that was built, it was designed for another level. Whether or not that's still feasible to put another 70 parking spots on top of that, that's something we'd have to do some engineering work to see if with the new building codes, if anything has changed. But I think that's something we can explore, and so I'll get a proposal from the people who've worked with that facility, see what it would cost to do that initial look at that, and then we could consider that. The other is when we looked at the downtown plan and that analysis of parking, you saw the current and future shortage is that area north of 2nd Avenue, and we also had looked at that Goodyear site as a potential new facility in the future, and so I think having some discussions with Kilborn Group about a mixed-use project there and looking at the feasibility of how to pay for a facility there. The other option is NP Avenue, our NP lot. There's a big enough footprint that the city owns on that to build a parking garage. Randy owns the adjacent parking lot, so there could be some mixed-use development there. So that's a site where there's probably not as great a demand for the parking, at least right now. But I think it's one to explore for the future. There's a lot of surface parking lots in the area that could probably be redeveloped if we did have more structured parking in that vicinity. The other thing to think about with that, as far as scheduling, is that Main Avenue is going to be, or NP really needs to be reconstructed. The water lines are old. The street is old. Engineering is reluctant to try to do that in the next 2 years when Main Avenue is under construction in 19 and 20, and maybe getting back to this street in 2021. So if we're doing something in the very near term, this might not be the best location. I guess I prefer not to kind of do a repeat with Roberts Commons where we build the parking garage first and do the street second. If we could try to do it the other way around. But that's another site, I think, that we could consider. And so I think those are the three areas where we can kind of take a focus on and try to bring you some more information for the future, or at a future meeting. We talked about maybe having a retreat where we could maybe, roll up our sleeves and look through this data and kind of kick around where we are with finances too, how do we pay for it. So I just wanted to keep that in your mind, that if we're going to get more development downtown, we're going to need more parking. Transit can be part of the solution, but I don't think it's going to be the complete solution.
So I think that that's a real good idea. So do we have a date scheduled for our little parking summit? And are we thinking November or December? When do we
I don't know. I
think
guess
we wanna
I know November is kind of a,
coming up on us pretty quick.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
I think our
When's your
regular
place
meeting
done?
would be right after Thanksgiving, and I'm trying to think if I'm in town that
Okay.
day. But
Can I ask a question
Yep.
real quick? So Jim, we had like a priority list. This is a few years ago, so maybe we could just
Yeah.
have that for reference.
Right.
Remember where we kind of
Yeah,
have
and our
it? So
parking.
if we could have that in a future meeting, I think that'd be good to.
I think that study would be helpful to look at that again, that it considered where a ramp could fit downtown, and so I think it's important to look.
But I also think what you talked about, so there's major construction with Main Avenue, NP, but to have those fit in with this, that's a key part of it too, that we have to try to get this all to fit. Otherwise, we're going to be on top of each other, and that wouldn't be good either. So
Right, so exactly, and I think that we could coincide development with streets instead of the other way around. Like you said, we don't want to replicate that where you build a development and tear up the street. But it could be that you could build the street
Well, and
and
the
the
relationship with
development at the same
engineering
time.
is extremely
Yeah.
important, so hopefully that could be a part of the retreat agenda,
Right.
is
Yeah.
I think
how
it'd be
we're,
good to
how
shoot
we're
for
strengthening
January
that.
rather- I mean, December's pretty tough.
Yeah,
November,
maybe.
And we want to make sure that people can be there, so we're on schedules now, so we can plan ahead
Yeah,
for January retreat.
that sounds good, Jim.
That sounds good.
Yep. Anything else on that? That's good. So, thanks, Jim. The restoration projects?
The, first, probably thank Andy again for coordinating this, this restoration project. As we look at the, restoration project, we're doing work at the Civic ramp, the Island Park ramp, and the GTC garage. So the Civic Center ramp, the restoration work, I believe, is all completed except for some punch list items. Two outstanding issues are, one is we've identified that the roofs on the tops of the stair towers should be replaced. Well, we have a leak in one. We're getting some change order proposals. I think those might be a little too high, but so we're looking at whether or not we need to actually bid that out again. And secondly, the camera system still needs to be bid out. The sub-consultant, Declara Walker, O&E locally, needs to do some more work to get that system together, those plans and specs together. The Civic ramp, we're using a repair and replacement fund, and that fund is pretty tight, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to get all the cameras in that we'd like to, but we're going to at least get a bid for the conduit and all of that. Then how we'll actually bid this is the contractor will put in all the conduit, and our IT department will come behind and individually buy the cameras and recording equipment. I think the prices will be more favorable that way, and so that's what our IS department's recommending. So we hopefully bid that out towards the end of this year or in January. The Island Park ramp, the restoration work that was in the original bid is all complete, I believe. There was a change order for some membrane repair work that we added to the project, and so that's what's being done here, and why the facility is closed. When that facility was built, there was a membrane that was put in on the first couple levels because of some damage to the concrete during construction, and so it's really important we maintain that membrane. And so we're doing about the drive lanes, but not the parking lanes. The camera system would be bid out at the same time as the Civic ramp. GTC is actually now I think almost all that work is complete. It was Andy noted, closed for longer than expected with that rain that came in. Hopefully, it was only supposed to be a week. It turned out to be, 11 working days, or 11 days that we would have had it open. The mechanical system on this one still needs to be bid out. When we opened bids, we did not get any mechanical bids. Apparently, contractors were that busy, and so we're going to try again in January. Hopefully, they'll be caught up on a lot of their work, and we can get some mechanical bids to upgrade the air handling system there. So, the issues we'll need to discuss is whether we should be, delaying or scaling back the camera system in the Civic Center ramp. And then secondly, the Island Park ramp, that was higher than expected because we didn't really hadn't planned to upgrade that camera system, but a lot of the conduit was damaged, and so more of it kind of come out of the connections, it's kind of hanging there. The Finance Committee is recommending that we use some of the TIF money for that, so I think if City Commission concurs, we'll be able to get the camera system completely in the GTC with the funds we have available. It's just the Civic Center ramp. We'll have to see where we're at when we bid that out, whether or not we move ahead with that now or have to wait a bit.
So Jim, when is the debt service, is the Island Park ramp paid for and done, and now isn't there some kind of a land thing that we have to decide?
Yeah, the outstanding debt that we have right now is we have those lots that we purchased in the railroad. I believe we have 3 years left on that. The 3rd Street lot that's down by the railroad tracks, we have 2 years left of special assessment debt on that. The special assessment debt is about, $60,000. The debt for the land is from the railroads is in that $300,000 range, about $105,000 a year each for the next 3 years. We borrowed $450,000 to do these renovations on the Civic ramp, so that'll be paid off over the next 3 years. The land under the Island Park ramp, that's been budgeted to be paid for from the remaining proceeds in the TIF. We are, per the agreement, we were required to buy that in 2020. We wanted to buy it early. We got an appraisal and made an offer at about $750,000, which is about $16 a square foot. Actually, a city assessor has it at $11 a square foot, and the banks came back and said they want $29 a square foot, and so we're simply too far apart. We're going to have to wait for 2 years, and then when they really have to sell it to us for a reasonable price, not this. I don't know where they came up with the number, probably thin air.
So what's left for the TIF value?
The TIF will end once we buy the land. We're required to end the TIF once the land. We have what we're going to talk to the Finance Committee about, and this will have to go to City Commission, is put about $800,000 in escrow from the TIF to buy the land in 2 years. That's our plan. Hopefully get it for about that amount, or hopefully for less.
Okay. Thanks. I think maybe for the next meeting before our retreat, just to maybe can bring back another financial report, see where we're at with all this stuff, and we'll take a look at it ahead of time. But it gives, especially since we're looking at facilities again. So anything else there?
Nope.
Can I just add one more thing, and this is a little bit off topic, but so the Roco ramp is very nice, and it's got cameras and all that, but we still, I would encourage the police to still go in there, because it's still, it's open to the public, the walkway and the lower level, and we have had issues with people just kind of hanging around, and so we have to make sure that it's safe and people feel safe, and so that's, it's well lit and it's cameraed, but you still, and it's required to allow people to be in there. And so, but I do think it's important that the police still go in and do a walkthrough every so often and things like that. Because anyway, and I'll try to pass that on too. But it's the cameras and all these new ramps. That's very important. I mean, that's perception is people want to know that there's people watching and it's well lit. And so that's just my editorial comment. But I think it's a big deal.
If you're interested, Andy, I could give a quick summary on how often we have security, through there. We don't want to do it, too much because it's expensive, but They are usually checked
Yeah.
out each morning.
So we contract with Century Security. They do a few of our facilities. Specifically in Roberts Commons, they go through 4 times a day. Typically, we ask that they make a pass around 6, 7 a.m. With Pure Bar opening, they have classes, I think, as early as 5 or 6. So we have asked them to bump their first patrol up, specifically looking for, folks maybe that are sleeping in stairwells and things. And we're meeting with the condo association tomorrow to talk about this very topic, and police will be represented.
So is that it for that one? Okay, I invited the DCP to come and visit, and maybe we can talk about, have them come up now and just maybe join us, Melissa, in the Block 9 update, and then we can merge that with what we've heard from some of the retailers as far as the, communication, and maybe the DCP, we need all hands on deck. So engineering needs to know what's going on, parking needs to know what's going on, block by block needs to know what's going on, but the retailers need to know what's going on, and the DCP might be our best connection with the retailers. So, Mark, you want to start with the Block 9 update?
Yeah, the Block 9 update is a proposal on what the permanent parking is going to be after the construction is over. I believe we have representation here to discuss it. They've been working with engineering on identifying where the areas has gone from diagonal parking to parallel parking, and then the time zones associated with that. Once they get approval here, then they'll continue with, I believe, T-Tech and PUPEC, and then City Commission. So once the Block 9 project is finished, it will be signed accordingly to what's being proposed. In your packet, you have a packet that kind of identifies the final plan. It talks about a couple areas for valet parking. In essence, what that means from the city is that it'd be signed for like 15 minutes. Is there anything else you want to add to the Block 9?
If you do, why don't you come out so we can,
I think
We got
the city with the Block 9 agreement approved what the plaza would look like on the private property. There's also been approval of use of the right-of-way for construction, but there not has been final approval of how the streetscape will look at. And because the Parking Commission makes recommendations regarding parking, we really need your recommendation before this would then move on to PUPEC and to City Commission. So maybe just kind of go over and see what the changes are, see if you're comfortable with them, and then just write your recommendation would move on to City Commission along with the recommendations. I don't know if it goes to Traffic Tech too, or just PUPEC.
Conversations with Brenda, she felt that it would go to T-Tech too.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Keith with the Kilborn Group, and I'm the point man or the project manager for the Block 9 project. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the consideration. So just to hit this kind of more at a high level, there's a few different components of this. So the plaza, starting there, we're proposing that we remove the parking adjacent directly to the plaza. The goal of this plaza is that there's a lot of people coming there to enjoy events and be a great downtown space and a showcase for the community and for the downtown. We feel like with the number of crowds there, the size of the events, we want to have both from a public safety standpoint, a circulation of just crowds working in that space. We feel like it would be important to have that additional room along the sides of the plaza just to help and ultimately manage the events that are happening there. As you start working your way around the building, on the Broadway face of the main building, we're looking for a drop-off zone there for the hotel. So the main hotel's entrance is there. And then that valet and drop-off service is a very critical operation to the function of any hotel for that matter. So because of looking for that drop-off zone, it makes more sense to have a parallel system there. Just from you lose more efficiency if you put the diagonal in there and then try and have a drop-off zone. So we kind of end up with a net gain. And then also too, with the wider sidewalk there, it's something we hear the city talking about kind of long-term plans for the downtown area and adjacent to other buildings. From a public safety standpoint, having more room for outdoor seating, those types of things, we think that's a good solution there. You work your way around the north side of the building. There again, with the office tenants coming into that space, with RDO obviously being the main tenant of that space, we look at there being a drop-off zone on that area as well. So parallel parking would be a good fit there. As you work over to where the ramp is at, we had originally proposed diagonal parking, and I feel like it was maybe even a presentation a year or so ago in this, with this committee that they just, the idea was just match the rest of the block. It helps from a snow removal and efficiency type of standpoint there in that area. And then the east side of the ramp, that would remain as is. That's currently parallel parking. And then the US Bank area, the southeast corner of the site, we're not advocating to address any of that right now. It's not in the scope of the project right now. So the overall component of this, like I said, I put a summary together of the counts, of the anticipated counts. So with the project, with the ramp being added to the project, we feel like we would project that available, call it daytime parking or during the business hours parking, comparable to what was there with the street parking available. We're about the same, maybe net, a little bit net positive a little bit with that ramp there. But the big influx is when the off-hours parking. We're at 140 plus new additional parking stalls to that space. All for the trade-off of we feel 650,000, 625,000 people coming to that block on a yearly basis is not out of the means of what this project can bring to that block. So.
The additional parking is in the garage? Is that where it's coming from?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So there's.
And that's free parking, or is that?
We haven't decided yet what the rates will be. Our agreement with the city is that we will charge something that's consistent with city rates and consistent with city facilities downtown, so of similar parking ramp. We are actually just working on getting the management group up to speed, and then we would start to understand what the actual rates will be for charging there. But the idea is that there is contract parking available in that space, but anything that is not contracted during business hours would be available for use, just for general public to come in and have a paid parking availability. And then obviously the nights and weekends, then it's open for the public use.
But the city's agreement is that they have to provide nights and weekends, at least 200 spaces that are free. The only exception is that if we're charging because of the street fair or something else, that they would also charge that same rate, but then the city would get 50% of that revenue.
So the public parking's free after what time, 5, and nighttime and weekends, or what?
Remember, it's 5 or 6 o'clock.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, it's 6 to 6 is the designated hours for.
6 to 6?
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
so.
So when you just count up the spots, there's quite 34 on-street spots that are being displaced. So again, that public portion of this, that access is going to be helpful because, it's quite a few less on-street spots with this configuration.
And there's a restaurant inside this plaza, correct?
Yes, with the hotel, there is a main restaurant and bar associated with that, yep.
And so the parking for that, when you say there's 140 additional spots, I mean, a lot of that will be, I would think, employees and/or patrons of that restaurant, correct?
Yeah.
I don't know if, Jim, is there a net increase in parking when to anybody else in the downtown area when you have another restaurant inside there, and it easily eats up 125 parking spots?
I think if we look at the Block 9 development, they're going to have 379 parking spots. I don't think there's a lot of surplus beyond. I think that facility will probably use 100% of those. So while there's some loss on the street, though, one of the things we've tried to do to mitigate that is to have that free available in the evenings and on weekends when there's a lot of demand for street parking, as well as having ROCO available with that first 2 hour free for that short-term parking to kind of help offset the loss of this offset or parking around the block.
And so who controls that in the future? I mean, we can start that way and we can have 200 parking spots. Can that change 2 years down the road? Is this going to be an agreement that,
The 25-year agreement,
okay,
I think, or maybe, can't remember if that requirement goes longer, but at least the 25-year term of the contract for deed.
all right.
Okay, and Melissa, one of the reasons that we asked you to come is the communication is just critical. So again, we've, had streets blocked off without retailers or our parking commission knowing, and we're not blaming anybody, we're just saying we need to be communicating, so Jeremy and engineering.
I think that's a very good point, and I think we've already learned we have to have a better communication between engineering and parking already. And I do think that the DCP and we need to do a better job. And so I got that message already, but I do think it's a big deal.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, no, but you've been at those meetings. So again, we've been hearing from retailers, and it's frustrating because, again, contractors are taking up retail spots, and employees are abusing those and 4-hour spots, and it's an ongoing issue. So, Melissa, do you have some ideas about how we can reach out to those? I mean, the businesses need to take some responsibility too. Like Andy said, when he reaches a corporate partner, it's really on them some to let their employees that are using that know, but then you have a maybe more robust list to contact. And again, just reinforces if we maybe work on this all together, we're going to have some progress that way. Do you have some ideas on how you're going to go forward?
Yeah, initial ideas. I think, Andy and I just continue to strengthen our communication, between the two of us. And the DCP team, we're internally working on a newsletter that will go out to all of our members. And part of that newsletter will include topics like this, just to educate and advocate for our members and our businesses downtown, because, they want to know. And I think that will help the negativity and the perception and all the little buzz that's happening on the streets. Is if they're informed, they're okay, and then they can help inform customers as well. So I think, communication, like Margie said, communication is so important, and we cannot over-communicate. So any kind of information you guys can share with us, we're happy to spread.
And this kind of merges into the next topic about bylaws and membership, things like that. So, originally we had a DCP board member on this committee. And again, I think, it's been, 20 years? I don't know, 1999. So we're looking at the current bylaws. But again, I don't see any reason why we can't expand this committee. And whether it's voting members or not, having them at the table is the most important part. Dave?
I think that's a great idea, and so I would support that. And can I just add one more thing? So I think the best start would be if we could forward on to everybody so they knew what the engineering policy is for these, for getting permits for sidewalks, and, because I think then that would, at least everybody would know what the rules are, including the businesses. But it's easy to be critical of all this stuff, but it's a great thing. I mean, we have lots of things going on in our downtown with improving the downtown, so let's not get too focused on how negative all these little things are, because there's a lot of downtowns where there's nothing going on, and then you don't have to worry about all this stuff. And do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These are all very positive signs. Everyone's improving their facilities. We're upgrading, and it's short-term pain, but it's a good thing.
Yeah.
If you want to have nothing going on, we have a lot of alternatives in our area. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yep.
And
The whole idea is to be proactive with communication. There just can't be enough.
Well, it really is a good thing. It's absolutely a good thing. However, I, as a parking commissioner, would like to have sort of my elevator speech ready to go, so the talking points, so that when I get caught on an elevator and/or just walking down the street and get confronted, and sometimes it is a confrontation with these kinds of questions, it's really important for us to be able to clearly articulate an answer rather than say, geez, I didn't really think about that, or, God, I don't know. That's really an uncomfortable feeling. We really need to have more information, more knowledge, more intersection between the departments.
Jim?
Yeah, I think this parking plan works well for the Block 9 development. It makes a lot of sense for, how to fit that needs. Certainly we're going to be having a little less short-term parking on the street, but I think that's why we need to get ahead and start thinking about our next facility. I look at the next few years is that this Block 9 garage will be done about a year from now. The actual office tower won't be done until sometime in 2020, so the garage will actually open and be able to provide parking for the construction workers, really when you have that peak number of workers, as well as probably some short-term parking. But then by 2020, we need to be ready with some more short-term parking downtown, whether that's on the Civic ramp or another facility. So probably the ideal window for the city to try to build another facility would be to start about as this garage finishes and be done before that tower is filled with downtown employees. So that's one of the things we want to talk about in the retreat in terms of not only where, but how this phasing would best work.
Yeah, and part of it depends on what the developments are, as far as, the relationship. ROCO wouldn't have happened without the private developers. So again, I don't think we're going to be building standalone ramps anymore.
Can I just say, so the request for the city staff is, could we get the policy, what the engineering department, so what the workers have to get as far as permits? What's our policy for sidewalks and issuing those, and for the parking for construction work? Just so, like you said, so when somebody asks us, and I get as many as, but so you can say, here's what it is, so we all know.
But there should be a list of what's currently approved now. We should know what the process is, but what is the engineering department already approved? The city of Fargo, what's going on? So that would be answering your question. If somebody comes up, then you can say, well, here's what the city's approved, here's how long that project is.
So with next meeting, we'll invite Jeremy. I already had a phone conversation. I know you've had some discussions with him, but just again, it's kind of like to get all the people that are connected and the contractors. So it's really helpful for you to have the representatives here. I know it's hard. You've got a lot of meetings, but it's kind of where everything intersects is, about how we can coordinate this. And yeah, we're going to have hiccups, like you said. It's they're going to be a learning process, but we're trying to stay ahead of it. And the more communication we have, the better.
We're kind of bouncing around in a lot of different topics.
Yeah, we are.
But
No,
one
I know.
thing
I'm just trying to get it.
One thing you had mentioned was a representative from the DCP,
Right.
one of the board members, and I think I
Yes.
originally was representative. And I think to expand and get a business owner or what have you as a member of the DCP on this board, I think that would be a great idea.
Absolutely.
Question for Keith and Mark. Do you need a recommendation from the Parking Commission today on this specific long-term plan?
Yes, that would be great.
So, we're going to lose some parking spots on the street, but we're going to gain some off the street for the public access. It's a net loss of 34 on the street, but then we gain 150 access at certain times of the day. So do we have any more discussion on that, or can someone make a motion? The question is to approve the parking plan, on-street parking plan.
I move for approval of the concept with the thought that we're going to have a retreat to add more parking in the future downtown.
Okay, so your motion is for the modification of the parking, the street parking?
No.
Just the one, or?
This concept that
Okay.
was presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, thanks. Sorry, I did get some subjects merged, but they do all come together. And again, Mark, so do you want to go over the bylaws? And I think it's important just to know, just like Dave and Margie said, what are the current laws with our engineering? And we also have current bylaws for the Parking Commission, and we may want to be addressing those. So, Mark, you want to
Okay.
do the bylaw update?
Yeah, again, as I'm educating myself, I
Thanks,
talked about this
Melissa.
at this last meeting. And, trying to work with the different boards that we staff and, get some more organization. As I dug into it, I couldn't find any bylaws for the Parking Commission, and I started digging into the history, and as I stated last month, there's a parking authority that's created underneath the Century Code that the city of Fargo did have at one time, but then Years ago, it was absolved by the city commission. The city commission kind of deemed themselves the parking authority. Well, then, as the land development code was being created in 1998, there was some more review of parking and parking facilities, and a recommendation from a study that was done stated that they needed some sort of a parking management board that was act as an advisory to the city commission. So one of my thoughts was to start the slow process of creating some bylaws, and I guess at today's meeting, what I would like to do is just in kind of in detail talk about what we think our role is. So that would be a good start to be able to form these bylaws as far as what we represent, what we look at, and how we represent that with the city. And then I think we'll come back and start identifying, you know, what entities should be sitting at the table. So I kind of want to do it in really small steps, and if that's all right with you guys. In essence, the Parking Commission, the documentation I've attached was created by Rick Lane by drafting a letter to the City Commission, identifying the need for Parking Commission to be able to observe and view time zones and parking issues that occur in the downtown. So we have that, I've attached that original report, and I believe on page 8, it talks about parking management, Roman numeral 8, on that study. But in addition, I've also attached in the Fargo Municipal Code where kind of Parking Commission has been identified, and talking about a little more detail of what the role of the Parking Commission is as an advisory body to the City Commission. And I'm not saying that this is our limited role, but I just wouldn't mind the board to talk a little bit about what they feel the Parking Commission's roles are, and how we should identify that in a future bylaw. Questions, thoughts?
So anybody have questions? So the idea, I think, is reviewing where we're at, you know, what are our current bylaws, and what do we think that our role is as a parking commission? And I think that most of these are, I think we can build on this. So it isn't scrapping it, it's building on it, because we've evolved so much since this thing was created. But you think about, you know, just people that should be at this table. I think transit, I think DCP, I think NDSU, I think neighborhood association, you know, because we want more people downtown. So, you know, I think we just need to have more people at the table. I know sometimes it gets unwieldy, but it doesn't necessarily mean everybody gets to vote. So the transit board has a lot of, you know, participants there, but not everybody gets to vote. But at least everybody's in the loop. So you're not trying to reach out necessarily after, you're divvying up that communication and making more connections. So just parking, when you think about it, parking is an integral part of our downtown and our community development. So it's not just about parking cars in a silo. It's about how does this impact our economic development strategy going forward, and how do people move around this town? How do we grow the number of people and not necessarily the number of cars, working with our partners and developers with mixed use, encouraging alternative transportation, and but foremost, making sure we're featuring people but accommodating cars. To me, that's the role of the Parking Commission, and I'm not sure that that's laid out in this bylaw here. But what are your opinions?
What are the bylaws for the other existent commissions, city commissions? What are the planning
Like planning
commission
commission,
bylaws?
yeah.
And how can we create more intersection between these committees?
You know, this seems like it'd be a great topic for the retreat to brainstorm.
Yeah.
I mean, to throw out who should really be involved. You know, today we thought, you know, engineering should be involved. You know, need the city commission involved to throw out different points, but.
Well, and there's
it
an
seems like a
arts
topic
commission
that-
that we have had some integration with, and some of it's been good, and some of it's been a little difficult. But I think it would be less difficult in all of these contacts if we were meeting on a more regular basis and understood the roles of the various commissions and what they perceive their roles to be.
You know, in the insurance industry, there's so much talk about self-propelled cars, and that you know, how's that going to affect
Right.
the future too? You know, how are those cars going to park and ramp? You know, things like that. What's the, you
Where are
know,
the drones
different
gonna go?
drones and-
Well, and I think that's critical. So like at Metrocog, they're doing Grow 2045. And, you know, just 5 years ago when they were doing that transportation plan, it was pretty linear. It was basically saying, okay, we're growing at 2% per year, so we can expect 2% more cars. Well, now they're looking at a multimodal about how do we plan to get what we want instead of the status quo?
Exactly.
You know, so I think that that's kind of a role that all of our parking commissioners and having those various entities at the table can just add value. But another thing you find out is work that other people are already doing that we're not even aware of. So you can, you know, you're spinning your wheels when somebody's already made some progress in an area. So again, I think by having more of those interconnected entities at the table would be helpful. But again, we're not going to decide this today, and I want to thank Mark for bringing this up because nobody that I know has really looked at this bylaws. So, you know, as from city staff level, you want to know, okay, where are we at? And then does the commission approve of what we think about?
Mr. Chairman, I just think that, so the DCP, I think for sure, at the very least, they should be a non-voting member and be at all the meetings.
Right.
But the neighborhood association, well, 20 years ago, there wasn't a neighborhood association. And
Exactly.
so that's another one, that the same thing, they should, whether they're, the debate about voting and voting or non-voting, but they should be here. And the main thing is engineering, so there's all these different things, they should all be at these meetings, just
Right.
because you pick up a lot of stuff. Anyway, so that's I think we should, like you said, at the retreat, have more discussion about, because there's other entities, I'm sure, that should be involved too, but I just think all those, anyway, so that's my.
Randy, anything?
Well, I think we're going to need a bigger room.
Well, seriously.
And our new digs must be huge, so.
They are.
I just got a count here. If we just do what the bylaws have, we got 6, that would be 10. And at Transit Authority, we have a table of 12.
Well, for me,
That's okay.
you know, ultimately, if you could actually control the revenue that we create and be able to say, look, we only owe $150,000 left on that building, let's
Yeah.
take care of that. Let's be able to finance another structure, and this is how we do it. Or at least be able to make, you know, stronger recommendations that that's what should be done with some of the funding and reserve for replacement. You know, what we're doing now is, in a lot of ways, just using that year's funding.
Right.
That should be set up, you know, especially when we're doing these garages, that you have reserved for replacement. So I just think we should be able to control a little bit more of that. A lot of the money goes right into the general fund, and so no matter what we do, we're really not controlling parking, you know. So I would like to discuss that as well.
And yeah, so these are all topics for what we're talking about for our retreat, and we can, like you said, Randy, you know, we don't want to get it where it's unwieldy, but I do think the focus on the revenues and the needed dollars.
Perhaps they don't have to be at every meeting,
Right,
you know,
well-
if you're talking safety issues in the
Right, right.
downtown area, you know, there's a safety committee that we could bring in, or in some cases, we could have, like the city commission does as a liaison, you know, to these different meetings that go on. So maybe we could go out too as well and visit with them, talk with them, you know, about the issues that they're concerned with, and then bring it back.
Well, and that's part of the idea, possibly, like with transit, to have someone from parking sit at a transit meeting. You don't vote, you're just there.
Right.
Well, and one final thing on this whole integration thing, I think it would be really important to have whoever's involved in communication for the city, who's actually responsible for that, connecting with people who are in charge, and maybe they already do this, the people who are in charge of communication for DCP. It's really important that the messages are clear and are the same.
So Commissioner Pepcorn, when we have conversations here, do you, as a liaison, just so I understand your role, do you bring this back, like these discussions? Does that go back to the commission meeting? Or is it only brought up if there's a question because you're the liaison?
I do, and you already know, we work a lot all the time. And I'm also on the finance committee, and the truth be told, that's where the
Rubber hits the
where the
road.
rubber hits the road. And so that's what, being here is very important for me, because what all you people say, I absorb it as best I can, and that's what we use to But it's very complicated, but the more people that are here and are communicating, the better it is, the better product we're going to get. That's I don't know if that answers your
It
question.
does, I
but-
just wanted to get in, because this is all recorded, I wanted the people of Fargo to understand, you know, what it is we're actually doing here. It's just not a group of guys that say, or people, women, and that say we're going to raise rates. We actually think about what we're doing and understand it, and try to tie it in with the other departments of the city, and.
This is a big deal. I'm telling you, parking is a big deal. It's, it impacts many facets, and so this is very important work. You already know that. Economic development, I think our parking is probably one of the first things. Well, if you talk to the RDO people, the first thing they want to have is parking for their employees, or they're not coming. The first thing. Not, so you're living proof of this is a very important thing that we're doing. You might think, hey, this is not, but I'm telling you. So
Yeah.
I'm aware of it, and so I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but I'm on the finance committee, and that's where the deals go down. And so what you say impacts me, impacts the city, just like that. So that's
Follow the money.
sad but true. And I can I add a disclaimer? None of these comments are allowed to be used in future campaign.
All right,
So, Mark, we maybe took off more than you wanted us to.
no, I think that's a good start. It gives me an opportunity to be able to sit down and maybe hammer something out.
Okay.
My biggest goal is sometimes everyone gets easily distracted, and the next thing you know, we're on a mission that maybe we shouldn't be looking at versus focusing on really what we should be looking at. And that's my goal with this document.
Right. So I think we might be talking about the upgrades for Rocco ramp a little bit. Is that in our purview for parking? And to me, when, since 2004, we've talked about more parking facilities and adding the most value we can to them. So looking for opportunities to upgrade those ramps has always been part of our mission. So to me, that is well within the scope of this body to make those, if we can add value to our parking structures with motion sensors and with smart meters and save some energy and have, push clean energy to make it more attractive, that's a role for parking, as far as I can tell. I don't know do you guys agree or no?
Well, I
We're
think
going to
we
find out
discussed
today if we get the money.
Okay, I'm good.
Are you,
Can I just add one more? So if there's, I think we should start finding out when the time is for our retreat, and then also if anybody has specific things that they want to have, if they should contact Mike or contact the city, or just let us know. But the other thing, this is no joke, the parking meters in downtown, it's a management issue, and it's a local control issue, and so I think that should be something that we at least discuss, and I know it's a political thing, but our downtown is no longer small town anymore, and it's a management thing that we need, so.
And
that's
we haven't talked, as we've had these legislative forums, we haven't asked the candidates how they feel about parking meters, quite frankly.
that's a good
So,
one.
yeah, so we really don't know.
And then follow it up, are you willing to sponsor the bill if you're elected?
Exactly.
Well, and just not to keep, but it's a nonpartisan thing is what I hope.
Cool.
But we all have different contacts, and I do think it's a big deal. And so even though it's difficult to get sponsors sometimes, I think we have a pretty good group, and our legislative group is very large. And so I think, anyway, it's just something.
Well, then look what happened at Main Street. So with some changes in government, we got a better design for Main Street. So things are changing, so I think we just have to keep trying to embrace technology and help us.
So we all have to start wearing those hats that say parking matters.
Chairman, we do have a guest with us today.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, Jerry Christensen with the Freedom Resource Center. He spoke to us about a year ago, and I think he's got some information for us.
Thanks, Jerry, sorry. It's a long meeting today.
I've heard a lot of talk about revenue here, and you also have to be concerned with the liability you've got. Freedom Resource Center is a disabilities rights organization, and I'm not threatening you with a lawsuit. Let's get that straight right now. That's not my purpose is to help you avoid it. You have got multiple drive-by lawsuits waiting to happen in downtown Fargo because your accessible parking isn't correct.
So the place is designated for handicap spots is not in compliance? Is that what you're
That
saying?
is correct.
Okay.
Yes, there's, one document is called the Public Rights-of-Way Accessibility Guideline. That's not been adopted. It's been around since 2001 or 1999. The State Engineering Department says even though it's not been adopted, it is a best practice to follow it. As a Title II entity, parking is one of the programs you provide, and you've got an obligation for program accessibility, which includes parking. If you follow the Public Rights-of-Way guideline, everything that's in there is also in the ADA. So you need to be aware of that. We've done studies of a couple blocks downtown. Why did we pick those two? Well, one day we were having a meeting in the old Broadway. Well, let's take a look at the parking around this block that the old Broadway is on. Another one that was picked was the block that the Fargo Theater is on, because we had a person in one of our consumers expressed a concern about wanting to go to an event at the Fargo Theater, no parking, no accessible parking. So we've done those studies. I gave Andy a copy of that. We've talked with is it the Traffic Technical Advisory Committee, is that the correct name? A lot of this is a can of paint. It is that cheap in many cases. We've dealt with West Acres, and hooray, hooray, all of the accessible parking in the West Acres parking lot is now correct. 6 months ago, that was not true. So you've got a tremendous liability downtown right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, Mr.
Dave?
Chairman, can I jump in real quick? So first of all, I have a son in a wheelchair, and so this is in my wheelhouse. And the city of Moorhead has a lawsuit, and so the amount of liability that they have is a lot more real. And so I would be supportive of us doing kind of an audit just to see where we need, as a city, to do some, to see. It's much better to be proactive than reactive. And right now, Moorhead is being reactive, and so I'm very. And part of it is the law or the regulations change all the time. So back in the day when Broadway was redone, they followed the rules, but now do you know what I mean? The parking is just different than, none of this has been done intentionally, but it's part of progress. They know more, like to give an example with minivans, if you park and there's somebody next to you and your ramp goes down, it doesn't do any good. So there's a lot of this that we do, and a lot of it is we need to just incorporate this kind of like our parking as we're going along with our engineering projects. We have to make an effort but I appreciate what you're doing, and I do think it's a big deal. And part of it isn't just people with disabilities. Sometimes you break your leg. Sometimes you know what I mean? Sometimes assume it's just people with permanent disability. But and also, as you get older, there's a lot of,
Why are you looking at me?
There's a lot, accessibility affects a lot of people, but it's just human nature. You don't realize it unless you're doing it, and so that's the thing. So I do appreciate what you're saying, and I do think we know it's an issue, and I think part of it is it's just we need to, as we're going along, have that be part of our thinking.
So Jerry, did you help with West Acres as far as, even show them and maybe just share those regulations that you were talking about? And you've given those to Andy and Traffic Tech, I imagine, right?
Yes, I was a part of the West Acres effort.
Right. And you've been given this, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, it called to our attention, I believe it was about a year ago, some issues in the NP lot, and I believe we corrected those right away. I'm not sure if the on-street issues have been addressed. But.
Yeah, we do have a couple outstanding issues in the lot. We did address a few of them, but we still got a couple to correct. But yeah, then the on-street, so it's good that you've been to the Traffic Tech, and because there's some on-street, really just striping issues, I think, on-street. But
there's a lot of striping. You've got one block downtown where there is no accessible parking on the entire block. And that's.
Well, Jerry, thank you. I think it's true, it's just gotten grandfathered in, and we haven't been adapting with the changes.
And that's a term you have to be careful with. There is no grandfather
No,
in the
yeah,
ADA,
it's-
none.
Right.
And so I guess this is obviously another issue that should be on our agenda for our long term, because I think it's, but like at the Fargo Dome, it's the same thing. There was lots of the striping there that needed to be changed for accessibility, so I don't know if you want to talk about that, but even the restrooms there, but it's a challenge, because if you change it, it's very expensive, you know, like, and so, but that's just part of the deal. Go ahead.
Some of it can be expensive, changing restrooms, obviously.
Right.
But when it comes down to parking, a lot of it is you go out with your paintbrush
Yep.
and you just do it right.
I just have one question. So we would need to adopt some ordinance. Would that affect the private lots too then, Jim or Jerry?
ADA is a federal law, and it is, I mentioned Title II. State and local government are Title II entities. That's the city of Fargo. And Title III is places of public accommodation. And that's your restaurants, that's everything else. Most of your parking in downtown Fargo, well, all of your on-street parking, that's public right-of-way parking. That's on the city of Fargo. All of the ramps that Andy's group is managing, that's all city of Fargo. In the North Dakota Century Code, it gives the police the right to go in any parking space. They don't have to be invited into this parking lot. If there's a violation on an accessible parking, the police can write a ticket.
But again, and again, that would affect all private lots that we have in the city
Yes.
of Fargo as
Yeah.
well. All right.
Yes.
Thanks. Do you have anything further, any other questions? We do want to thank you, and we want to address it.
Andy handed around one copy of a study that we did. I've got a couple more copies of those studies here. They're yours. This is a little document that we put together about accessible parking in North Dakota. If you look in the ADA doesn't require blue stripes on parking, accessible parking. North Dakota does. So if you hire somebody to do striping, you need to know that they know what the North Dakota Century Code says. There are things in the North Dakota Century Code that go above and beyond the ADA. We see a problem with that. Grocery store chains, for example, headquartered in Minneapolis, they send out a crew to restripe their parking lot. Where's their crew from? Minneapolis. How do they stripe it? Minnesota rules. Not the same. There are differences between them. So you need to be sure that you're up to speed on not just the ADA, but what does North Dakota Century Code say too?
Thank you.
And this document has got a lot of that information in there, both ADA and North Dakota Century Code.
Thanks. Hopefully, we can address it as soon as possible. Sounds like you've already made a few changes on some of the flat surface parking. Yep. Good deal. Thank you, Jerry.
Welcome. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else for the good of the order? Thanks, it was a long meeting, so Jim and Mark, you'll figure out, or we'll have a standard meeting in October, November, December, and then maybe look for our summit in January, maybe? Is that the idea?
Sounds good.
Yep, okay. Thanks, everybody. Anybody want to move to adjourn?
I'd like to stay a little longer.
Okay.
I just want to get to my 11.
I'd like to override that. So moved.
Second.
Aye, all in favor, say aye.